I'll never forget the day the truth came out. The day those cruel, bitter women got exposed for what they truly were. It's a story I've kept to myself for too long, but I think it's time I told you about Amina and the prince. Amina was just a kid when her world fell apart. Her parents died suddenly in an accident, and she was sent to live with her aunties, Mariam and Fatima. They lived in a big house at the edge of our village, the kind of house that looked nice on the outside but felt cold and rotten inside. From the moment Amina stepped through their door, they treated her like trash. She wasn't their niece to them, she was their unpaid servant. Cooking, cleaning, fetching water, Amina did it all, and she never complained. But the worst part, they never let her forget that she was an orphan, that she had nothing, and that she was nothing. Amina, why are you so slow? You're useless just like your parents. Fatima would sneer, while Mariam laughed and tossed another pile of clothes for her to wash. The rest of us in the village tried to help when we could, slipping her some food or a kind word, but we knew the aunties would punish her if they caught us. So we watched from the sidelines, helpless and angry, as Amina grew thinner and quieter, though she never lost that spark in her eyes. One day, everything changed. It was a chilly morning when Amina found him. She was on her way back from the well, balancing a heavy pot of water on her head, when she saw a man slumped against a tree near the road. He was dirty, his clothes were torn, and he looked half dead. Amina could have ignored him. She could have walked right past, like so many others had. But that wasn't Amina. She put down her pot and gave the man some water. She shared the little food she'd hidden under her shawl, a piece of dry bread meant to last her the whole day. She even stayed to make sure he could stand before heading home, knowing full well her aunties would beat her for being late. "I don't have much," she told him, her voice soft but steady. "But take this. You need it more than I do." The man's eyes lit up with gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. "You don't know what this means to me." Amina just smiled and walked away. She didn't think she'd ever see him again. She was wrong. A week later, the village was buzzing with news. The prince was coming. Not just any prince, the richest, most eligible bachelor in the kingdom. He was on a secret journey, looking for a bride, they said. And he'd chosen our village for his next stop. The aunties went wild. They dressed up in their finest clothes and dragged Amina along, telling her to stay out of sight but to carry their things. They laughed at her patched dress and bare feet, sneering, as if someone like you could ever catch a prince's eye. When the prince arrived, the crowd parted to make way for him. He was tall, handsome, and dressed in gold and velvet. But something about him felt familiar. I saw it in Amina's face too, the way her eyes widened in shock. And then he spoke. "It's you," he said, pointing straight at Amina. "The girl who saved my life." The crowd gasped. The aunties froze, their smiles slipping as the prince walked straight past them to stand in front of Amina. "You gave me water when I was thirsty. You fed me when you had nothing. You showed kindness when the world turned its back on me." His voice was firm but warm. "You're the one I've been looking for." The aunties tried to intervene. "Your Highness, there's been a mistake. She's just a servant. A nobody." But the prince silenced them with a glare. "A nobody," he said. "She has more heart and courage than the two of you combined. And as for being a servant, well, I think you two should know exactly what that feels like." What happened next was almost too good to be true. The prince ordered an investigation into how Amina had been treated. When the truth came out, Mariam and Fatima were stripped of their wealth and forced to work as servants themselves. And Amina, she became a princess. The wedding was the grandest event our village had ever seen. Amina looked radiant, dressed in silks and jewels, but what stood out most was the smile on her face, a smile that said, "I made it." As for the prince, he wasn't just rich and powerful. He truly loved Amina. You could see it in the way he looked at her, like she was the most precious thing in the world. I still think about her sometimes, about how she went from being an orphan servant to a princess loved by all. If anyone ever deserved a happy ending, it was Amina. And her aunties, let's just say they got what they deserved.